Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. Once again, skill-based insert blank here is at the forefront of a Call of Duty discussion, but for a rather interesting reason this time. This is not a, uncommon discussion in the COD community, especially over the course of the past few years. This dates back all the way to Warzone 1 and, Vanguard. I know we were discussing this. Then all throughout Warzone 2's era and everything, like the past few years, skill-based whatever has been a major discussion. Like, we obviously know skill-based matchmaking is a thing. We've known about that, going all the way back to Advanced Warfare. It was obvious it was active in that game. But in more recent years, you have people claiming things like skill-based damage, skill-based audio, skill-based hitboxes, like anything and everything you could think of. People claim, oh, that's skill-based. Now, of course, the way to prove this is through analytical testing, getting objective data from multiple different variable accounts here, and people have done that over the years, disproving that any of that exists. It's not real. It has not been in the game, despite the fact that it may feel like it at times. A lot of it can be attributed to just how bad COD servers are. But recently, the devs themselves actually came out and addressed further accusations of this being present in COD. But the way this all starts is rather interesting. So this ended up going kind of viral on Twitter a few days back. This post, Sony has published a patent for dynamically adjusting, which is nerfing or buffing players in multiplayer sessions to balance cross platforms like console, PC, and mobile. The technology would monitor hardware input methods and skill levels in real time, and then nerf or buff players, such as by reducing speed or reaction times for console and PC users to balance disadvantages faced by mobile players using touch controls. Now, this is just simply them creating a patent around technology like this. So what this does in a way is, if this were to actually be fully cleared as a patent and they got approval for it, publishing a patent is not getting it approved and not it being, fully active and live for what it's worth. This is not fully active and live yet. They just created a patent around it, but they create patents for everything. People out there create patents for everything. I think there's a patent for a time machine. So take that for what it's worth. But obviously, this kind of system is what you'd expect from like a skill-based damage system that could be applicable in other titles like Call of Duty. It's been accused of having this. Battlefield's been accused of having this. I think most games out there from a competitive sense have had questions raised about it. Like I said, at least in the COD community, we have 5+ years of people going through and thoroughly testing the stuff to disprove it being live in game. But this is interesting because Sony is the ones who are trying to go through and do this, which in theory, if Sony were to get approved for this patent and it were to actually go live, anyone from Microsoft or Xbox or these other companies wouldn't be able to use tech like this. Individual titles that aren't Sony first-party titles wouldn't in theory be able to use this same application. For what it's worth, though, we do have Friend here who's done a lot of testing and sort of helped disprove some other theories in the past. Like, you may remember back in Black Ops 6, the fake hit markers, the fake blood that was showing up at times that had people also believing that skill-based damage was a thing or something weird was going on. Players were being live nerfed. Friend went through, he actually showed how input latency and whatnot was causing things to appear client side that the servers weren't registering. So he's done some data testing in the past that was actually really helpful. He goes through and explains this a little bit more. Since many won't read the actual patent specification, it could be worth pointing out that it also describes examples of how there's visual notifications that indicate if this feature is active and when a player or someone else is in the game getting those adjustments, as well as an option to enable or disable this yourself. It could be implemented in a fair and transparent way and doesn't necessarily have to be something nefarious or a secret or even used at all. Also, it's not necessarily new. It's a patent application originally filed in 2023, which was recently published. No patent has been granted, and we don't know if it will be. The US application was rejected for being too abstract, meaning they'll have to make amendments to the claims, and if it is granted, it's just a patent. It doesn't really mean anything. It doesn't have to be used. It's just theoretical. Sony has other patents they don't use, which is very common. If you think it sounds bad, then be glad Sony are trying to stop their competitors from being able to do it by patenting it themselves. For what it's worth, there's also, I think people discovered, a few years back, Sony originally had patents planned for commercials in game that you could skip by standing up and saying the brand's name, as ridiculous as that sounds. But I'm sure you're wondering, okay, what does this have to do with COD? Well, here's where things get interesting. So this initial tweet describing this new patent application, like I said, went semi-viral, and Readboy, who always is like going through and getting the camos unlocked super fast every year and doing crazy like marathon streams and stuff, he posted saying, people really try to call me crazy every time I tell them skill-based damage is 100% real and in the game. Like I said, we've got data proving it's not live, but now we also have it directly from Matt Scrunts, the Treyarch lead dev, like the studio lead here, saying, I can promise you there's nothing behind the scenes modifying any of our damage values. So this, to my recollection at least, is the first time the devs themselves, that somebody directly at Call of Duty has come out and said, no, this is not happening in the game. Now, I know some people will jump to previous iterations, like for instance, skill-based matchmaking. We knew it was a thing long ago in Advanced Warfare. When it really started to pick up, you could clearly see it was in the game by testing a reverse boosted account and a normal account. It was two different matchmaking scenarios. Like, we knew it was in the game. The devs repeatedly said there's nothing crazy going on, and then ultimately it's clearly obviously a thing that they've referenced now in official white papers and whatnot. I know a lot of people will probably sit here and say, well, obviously they're going to say that doesn't mean it's true. Again, when you take the data that we have, and then now also Matt Scrunts saying, hey, there's nothing behind the scenes modifying any of our damage values, we can put the two and two together and see that it does line up. Now, obviously, if there's new testing done and it shows that data is not lining up and the damage numbers are not lining up in certain scenarios, that's a whole different discussion, because then that would clearly prove that something nefarious is going on. But we now have it, in multiple instances of data backing up it not being live, and the devs themselves also saying there's nothing modifying any damage values here. So just because you have a really good one game, then you jump into the next match and it feels like your gun's not hitting the same, or it's not nearly the same experience, doesn't mean there's necessarily something nefarious going on. I think what's the one quote? It's like, don't attribute to malice what can be attributed to incompetence. And I think we really got to direct that a lot towards Call of Duty and their server output, because COD servers are the whole reason that a lot of these discussions exist in the first place, where fake hit markers were showing up, or fake blood splatters rather, back in Black Ops 6 were showing up. Why it feels like you shoot first, die first. Why it feels like your TTK is inconsistent one game to the next. COD servers, and we've known this for a long time, it's always something I complain about and criticize whenever we do like review videos of the new games that drop and anything that happens with major updates. Their servers are pretty pathetic for as big of a game as they are. They have infinite funds to go through and fully invest in top tier servers for their products being one of the biggest games on the planet, and they just don't. They haven't. COD servers are embarrassingly bad, and it leads to situations when you also factor in there is skill-based matchmaking. So you have one really good game, one match where you're just frying, you drop a bunch of kills, minimal deaths, you feel like you are just melting everyone. And then the next game, it feels like everything is very mediocre, your gun's not frying, you're playing more skilled players, maybe you're not dropping an insane amount of kills and have a super high KD. That can likely be attributed to skill-based matchmaking doing its thing, where you had a really good game, so next match they're going to match you up with maybe some tougher players to try and balance things out, and because it's now searching for further parameters to limit you with, you had a really good game, and so now the matchmaking is going to kick in and there's less lobbies that you're going to opt into because you just had a really good game. It's going to take longer to find a match, your ping might be higher, you might be connecting to a different data center where your gun just doesn't feel like it's performing as good because your connection to that data center is worse. There's a lot of variables here in play, but it's interesting now that because these discussions have been so prominent in COD and really in gaming in general here for the past few years, we actually now have a dev outright saying there is nothing behind the scenes that is modifying any of our damage values. I know there's absolutely people out there that through the data over the years and through this still probably won't change their minds on what they think is or is not happening behind the scenes, if there's anything nefarious going on, and others might look at this and say, hey, we're actually getting transparency from a COD dev for the first time in a while on a rather controversial subject. But interesting that the devs have finally confirmed it outright. Not happening, not currently live in game. For what it's worth, if it was a thing, outside of us as a community testing ourselves so that nothing was being biased or swung in any way or spun with a narrative, I don't think the devs would ever outright say it was a thing in the game, unless it was like through patent wording and all this legal stuff. But that's what we got for now, an official confirmation outright from the devs. Skill-based damage, not a thing. That being said, that's going to wrap things up for this video. If you guys enjoyed it, do me a favor, drop a like. It's always seriously appreciated. And if you're new to the channel, you want to ensure you're always in the know for everything going on in COD, be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on those post notifications. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day, and I'll catch you later. Peace out.